Hey, welcome class. Here I am with my esteemed colleague from Palomar College, and we decided to come to San Diego, the first mission, to talk about a local topic that it is really full of controversy. As a matter of fact, Father Junipero Serra with Captain Portola came here in 1769 to establish the first mission. But this place that we're talking right now, it has caused so many commotions.
Yes, Alex, as a matter of fact, the controversy really grew in 2015 when the Vatican Church decided to canonize Junipero Serra.
Well, not only that, in 2017, they pushed for a bill. It's called the Assembly Bill 738, where they wanted to teach the truth behind the mission system in collaboration with Native American studies and with teachers from local schools.
But there's the question, what exactly is the truth? So we're looking here at the different perspectives, right, of perceiving the mission, whether it's an instrument of liberation or oppression. As we look at this difficult subject, we want to make sure that you understand we respect people's faiths and their views. However, we are historians, and we're looking at what happened historically in this time and context. For example, we know historically that the soldiers in this area saw people who were indigenous as gente sin razón, while many of the priests saw them as young children needed to be saved or have salvation.
Professor Jacobo, I was just thinking when Black Lives Matter movement, remember how a lot of the statues became threatened. As a matter of fact, there was a statue up in Monterey from the Padres that was actually knocked down.
Yeah, it's a very good point. Again, it's something that we have to again understand and look at the other perspectives that exist out there. What are these statues, these symbolisms mean to different people, right? For example, with the Black Lives Matters movement, you have statues to generals from the Confederacy. They are promoted or supported, of course, slavery, terrorism, frankly, against people of color back then. And so the question here for us is these statues like Junipero Serra, what do they mean to indigenous people who suffered also from the even violence, I have to say, from the Catholic Church? Again, it's a difficult topic, and with all due respect for our different beliefs, but it's something that we have to discuss and talk about.
Hey, Professor Jacobo, I was thinking about the time frame of this mission, 1769, because when Cortés defeated the Aztecs in 1521, and they started their own process of bringing the friars, bringing the priests to Christianize the indigenous people of Mexico City, the Aztecs. I wonder why it took over 200 years for Spain to colonize California.
Well, let's not forget that there was an encroachment on Spanish territory, especially in the northern part of the kingdom in New Spain. You have the Russians coming in everywhere for fur trade. You have English encroachment. And so it's very interesting to note that the mission system itself, in many historians' perspective, did not necessarily have a lot to do with indoctrination of native peoples and more with political and economic, even creating of a buffer zone, right, in the northern territories. In other words, using these lands and these people to protect the wealth of the empire in what today is Mexico. Again, it's called a buffer zone policy. But that was one of the reasons why it took maybe that long. Some will say that for these couple of centuries that there was not a whole lot of interest because there was not any perception of wealth in the northern territories. Once again, it was a perceived threat, then King Charles III immediately reacted by bringing in the church everywhere with the presidios, right, with the military to try to colonize these territories.
Yeah, that's right. At that time, the Russians were following the fur trade.
Correct.
And then you also have the English. I mean, you already have Captain Cook, who actually came all the way to Oregon. So they were really afraid of losing California. That's a really good point. So I was thinking, Professor Jacobo, that from 1769 up to 1883, that was the lifespan of the missions. But I really wonder at the end, what happens to the indigenous population when Mexico decided to dismantle the missions?
It's a very good question. As we have seen in the past, we often have good intentions that have very bad results for the indigenous population. In the case, for example, the encomienda system or repartimiento system. Now we have the Mexican government upon independence trying to dismantle, as you say, the mission system with the idea of returning the land to the native people. Now this was going to be done through a process, for example, of turning the mission sites into pueblos, and to again distribute the land to native people, having political leaders everywhere that will be in charge of these new towns and the political structure. Sadly, however, what we see with the kind of the Indian population and also political and economic interest, the land really never went to the native people themselves. It ended up with the creation eventually of the rancho system, the hacienda system, and of course the peonage, where the native people suffered tremendously as they became indebted workers, peons in the ranches here in California.
Yeah, how funny that we historians we have a saying that history repeats itself, because I was thinking in 1994 when the Zapatista uprising in Mexico, in Chiapas, President Salinas de Gortari privatized the Hilo land, that communal land that was supposed to be preserved for the indigenous population,
Correct.
and then he took it away for NAFTA. So I just wanted to connect those two things.
That's a very good point. I forgot to mention that the Hilo system began, in fact, with the dismantling of the mission system. And so you're right, it lasted all of these decades, and now the more modern times, if you will, with the Mexican government trying to privatize those lands that ended up being really sort of tourist destinations, right? In many cases, ending with suffering of Native peoples and also the rise of the Zapatista movement, right?
Yeah, well, in 1994, it's funny though, because at the beginning of those operations along the border, also dividing indigenous land too. So
Correct.
So I think about how the indigenous has been paying this suffering non-stop, even where we are today.
Definitely, that is very true. Let's recap, Professor Gomez. We began this section of the course with the collapse of the Aztec Empire and the beginning of La Nueva España, New Spain. And we have discussed the new social, political, and economic order under that new system. We discussed the encomienda system, the repartimiento system. And you have highlighted in a very great way how the mission system itself and the ranching system really did not change a whole lot the experiences of Native American people, did it?
Well, I feel that the indigenous population were trapped in a vicious cycle of violence, exploitations, and then now that you're mentioning the system of exploitation, let's not forget that you have the U.S.-Mexican War coming up later.
That's correct. And that would just catapult Native peoples into a more suffering, right? More being marginalized. Ironically enough, as you pointed out earlier in one of our discussions, you're going to have Mexicanos, ranchers, fighting for their properties, lands, if you will, land grants that have been taken in part from Native populations, right, during the pueblo period in California.
So it's kind of like we can say what comes around goes around.
Probably so, yes, sir.
Well, I hope you enjoyed this lecture, and I think it's really important to tap into our local history that is so rich here in San Diego.
Very true. And we'll continue with this as we go forward.
I hope you enjoy. Take care.